honestly. But we'll do our dance at the tavern with the bars who've traveled far, and we'll ask them of the places they've seen. Come away, adventure calls today, and tomorrow we'll tell of our tale. Come away, we'll see that dragon slain, but before we go, let's drink one more ale. I feel the call of the rover outside, and the glory that soon could be ours. Let's form a team and we'll take to the wild, and we won't burn down the tavern. No, we won't burn down the tavern. No, we won't burn down the tavern. Come away, adventure calls today, and tomorrow we'll tell of our tale. Come away, we'll see that dragon slain, but before we go, let's dream. But before we go, let's dream. But before we go, let's dream. One more ale. We've come on down to the tavern for trouble and for fun, and to talk about the old prophecy. And we all sing songs at the tavern of the fights that we have won, and we dream about our next victory. Come away, adventure calls today, and tomorrow we'll tell of our tale. Come away, we'll see that dragon slain, but before we go, let's drink one more ale. Well, we won't burn down the tavern like the times we did before. It was not our fault, we swear honestly. But we'll do our dance at the tavern with the bars who've traveled far, and we'll ask them of the places they've seen. Come away, adventure calls today, and tomorrow we'll tell of our tale. Come away, we'll see that dragon slain, but before we go, let's drink one more ale. I feel the call of the rover outside, and the glory that soon could be ours. Let's form a team and we'll take to the wild, and we won't burn down the tavern. No, we won't burn down the tavern. No, we won't burn down the tavern. Come away, adventure calls today, and tomorrow we'll tell of our tale. Come away, we'll see that dragon slain, but before we go, let's dream. But before we go, let's dream. But before we go, let's dream. 1,000 years you've been reigning terror, stoking up fears from deep in your lair. We're here to tell you that your time has come. This is our kingdom today.
Who are the fools who would dare threaten me?
Dragon can fall, we'll slay you with our mighty sword. Dragon can fall, your heart will soon be ours. Dragon can fall, you are the beast we're training for. We are the party who dare threaten you. We have no fear of your ancient power. they will not make us cower. We're here to tell you that the spells are cast. You will not last the night.
You are the fools who will now feel my wrath.
Dragon can fall. We'll slay you with our mighty sword. Dragon can fall. Your heart will soon be ours. Dragon can fall. You are the beast we're training for. We are the party who now will fight back.
Quick, grab the magic bow. All distracted. You'll never defeat me, dragon.
Prepare to meet your doom.
Dragon can fall. We slay him with our mighty swords. Dragon can fall. His heart will now be ours. Dragon can fall. He was the beast we're training for. We are the party who claim victory.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. This is a surprise. It's a surprise Office Hours. Well, I mean, not surprise. I planned it yesterday, or I wanted to do it with the merch drop. I hope you're all having a fantastic week so far. Happy Tuesday. I know, what a time to be alive. Your desk can do that. Team, I'm so excited about our latest merch drop. Very pumped to show you. Can't really listen well. Hi, Devin. Can't really. Oh, I'm sorry. Am I quiet? Is that what you mean, or that you aren't in a place to listen easily? No enough volume. Okay, let's go ahead and up it a little bit. Let's go try to find that sweet spot. There we go. There we go. I think something's wrong with this old Razer mixer, because every time I use it, I have to tweak it a little bit. But whatever. Jason, I'm glad. Thank you for being on there. Oh, I love the instant feedback too. You guys rock. You just made me deaf. Thank you. You're welcome. Wait, what? No. Many regrets ruining my audio. Okay, now it sounds good. It's all over the place. Oh my gosh, team. Okay, so one, I wanted to talk today about a couple new research projects we have that are going on. I want to talk about the new Insights tab and kind of like what we see the future of it. I wanted to talk about our new merch drop, and I want to talk about our GM giveaways. So here's my question. Do you guys want to do y'all first want to do merch and then new features and going over that stuff, or do you want to go over that stuff and then merch? You tell me, merch or updates? Merch or updates? Merch or updates? Just type it in chat. You want merch or you want updates? Let's see. Features. More yes. Okay, perfect. I just know that this originally was supposed to be the merch drop, and a lot of people were very. This original me was supposed to be for merch. Okay, perfect. Let's go ahead and pull up my image from last week. Is it? Yes. Okay. Here is the Insights tab. Is this the right one? Yep. I guess this is the right one. Oh, not that one. Perfect. So, a lot of folks had some questions on the Insights tab. And so I want to kind of go through what the different things mean. And I think we kind of did this already. And then what we hope to use this for. So one, the new player reliability. This is actually even an older one, is it? Hold on, let me get the newest one. I could show you mine, but it has no data, so I'm going to show you one that does have some data on it. All right. Alex. download that one. And then go ahead and sanitize it so you can't see the GM who was our fake GM that we tested this off of. All right. Where is it? There we go. 1 second, tools. Let's just go ahead and crop this real quick. Adjust size. All right. Oh my goodness. Come on up. Okay, I'm just going to share my screen and show you mine because I can't get this image to upload. All right. Let's go back to admin and here. Insights. Okay, there we go. I will share my screen. macOS screen share, window capture. Insights Game Master. There we go. Okay, so you all should have this. That's live now. Let's go ahead and pull it up. Now this one doesn't have enough data, but we're going to talk about the different things and why we think they're important. Okay, let me pull up chat so I can see all. Okay, so onboarding success rate. Onboarding success rate is a piece of data that we collect that if someone plays with you, but then they go on to play with a different GM on the site, like they play with you and you were their first GM on Start Playing, but then they leave and they go and play with a different GM. This is because we were looking at a bunch of GMs who were running starter set games, but they didn't have campaigns for people to jump into. But they were giving the users such a great experience that then they were like, oh, great, I want to go and play with another GM on Start Playing. We think that GMs should be rewarded for that. We think if you give someone a great first experience and they go on and play with a different GM instead of you, that should count for something. Let's see. Then we have time to tilt. That's how long it takes for your games to tilt. We think this is nice for GMs to know that, like, on average, when you launch a game, this is how long it's going to take to get enough players. We did before wanted to also put in like an estimate to players. When they looked at a game, they can see like, oh, okay, this game is likely to start in the next 12 days based off of like this GM's history, how many people have joined the game already, etc. So time to tilt is probably not something that we're too active on, but we do think it's really interesting to show GMs this is how fast your games tilt. And then your tilt rate, the percentage of your games that are tilting. So if you have 10 games and 5 of them end up being active, you have 50% tilt rate. Those aren't as actionable on our side as they are something that we think is good for a GM to see. Now, a lot of people say like I could just do this myself. Of course you can, but that's also just time you're taking away from it. Retention rate. This is also something we want that we know makes a great GM. Great GMs have really good retention rates. So pretty much anything above like 50 or 60 is considered a really good retention rate. But of course, it's over time. 1 week isn't enough to show a true retention rate. So over time. And then we have first session reliability. This is a big problem, and this is one of the big ones I'm excited to talk about. And if you do have a question, type question in all caps, and then your question, I'll go ahead and call it out. Somewhere around 20 to 30% of users sign up for a game with a GM and then never actually end up getting to play that game. That's because the GM ghosts them, or the GM, ends up like changing the game, or there's a number of things that happen. But the brand new player comes to the site and their first game never happens. And then sometimes they get one back, or they come back 6 months later. And we've interviewed a bunch of these players, and we're like, what happened? And we noticed that there's a handful of things where it's like, we didn't have enough players. And that one, kind of began to shrink when we started having active and pending games, right? Because an active game, we should know that like a game that's active should have enough players, right? Around 5% of the players were like, oh, the game ended up like someone dropped. And so that makes sense. That's the thing we hear often, right? Like, oh, we had enough players for an active game, but then someone dropped, and so we had to go back to pending. That makes sense. But someone joined a game and they said, yeah, I joined a game. It said it was active. But the GM said, hey, I actually want to like recruit more players. I just want the game active so more people join it. So then the player's like, well, I thought I was going to get to play this week, and now I'm not. That's kind of a bad experience for that player. So we notice around 20 to 30% of players never actually get in that first game after joining, right? It's like they end up later, like, it could be like their second game they join, they actually end up getting booked in, or it could be like, 3 weeks later. But there's this huge kind of portion of players that are having a bad first experience. Okay. Question for onboarding: what is the GM gets? What is it GMs get based on that number? Zathis, nothing right now. We're actually not doing anything with these metrics. First, we want to launch these metrics so that you can see them, and then we're going to start surveying and interviewing GMs about their metrics. So if we see someone like, hey, you have a really high onboarding rate, can you tell me about that? Or maybe you have a really low onboarding rate, and we ask you, and like, hey, what's going on? And you're like, you know what? Actually, I had this player joined, left, and then he just left my Discord. We want to get like real experiences to infer on this data. If we wanted to make this in a vacuum, it wouldn't be very fair, and it wouldn't take into account a lot of things that are outside of the GM's control. So that's why we want to launch these first on the GM side, and then let GM see how these numbers work and are interpreted, and then go ahead and start making tweaks to them based off of GM feedback. Joshua, my score has no data. So all the scores are based off 28 days of data. It's rolling 28 days. So after a new 7-day period has come, it drops off the previous 7 days, and it takes in the new next week's of data and calculates that into the full 28 days. Shit is question: forehead kisses metrics win. Question: can you add a benchmark to insights? So Chris, that is a great question. Why don't we have a benchmark? Because we don't know what the good number is yet that's realistic and fair. The thing is, we want this to be programmatic, right? And programmatic in the sense that like we can trust this number more than we do now. But right now, what if you get sick and you take off a week, right? Your retention might drop, but by how much? And is that like that should be kind of like expected. Like that's a realistic thing that happens. We shouldn't expect GMs to have 100% retention 100% of the time. That doesn't make sense. So that's why we want to start like looking at this data and then kind of figure out after we talk to GMs, like, hey, there are some GMs that have a 90% retention. There's some that have 70, some that have an 80, and then some that have a 60. And then there's like a very few that have 50, 40, and then there's a lot that have 30, 20, and 10. So we want to start doing more interviews to kind of figure out like, why is that the case? And you could also see like things that impact, like, oh my gosh, I took off this one day and I saw that's what happened to my retention. And you could even tell us when we go and survey you or interview you, like, oh yeah, what happened is a player couldn't make it, so we had to reschedule the entire session. But then we know, like, okay, rescheduling, we need to account for that. And we were originally building these metrics and trying to think of everything that we could account for. And instead was like, let us figure out what GMs tell us and see how much is affected in the wash of actually like your entire month of games. Okay, that's great. So that's why we don't have a benchmark yet. Xanath, question: will players be able to see these benchmarks in the future too? We don't know. I don't think so. I don't think that this is what we want to do. Is the best GMs, which is, anyone who has, any of these numbers that's excelling is a GM that we want players to play with. We are thinking about like maybe GMs who have really high onboarding rates or really high first session reliability or really high retention rates are the GMs that we give access to starter set. Because right now, when we give access to starter set, we just look at the history of a GM. And there are some GMs that have tons of reviews, but they have a really high, they have a really low onboarding success rate, which means a lot of new players play with them and then they never come back to the site. So we have to do a lot of manual analysis to decide what GMs we're adding to starter set. So we could do something like this where like, hey, really great onboarding success rate GMs, which is often GMs who excel at running one-shots. We want to give them access to starter set. People with really high retention rate, we want to give access to starter set. Those are things that like we might use this for. But it's also like, hey, we might want to do like a special call out. Like, hey, this is a verified GM. We verify that, they're super reliable. Because reliability is important. That's one of the main things that players talk about is they want to make sure that their GM is reliable. Okay, that was the question from Xanath. What's your geek question? In the Monster Mania event, demonstrating that the supply is far greater than the demand. Are there any metrics regarding how many available game slots there are pending? That's so hard to tell. What's the geek? But I would say we haven't stopped growing. Every week we grow in overall users. We've never shrunk. So I think that the demand is. I think there's maybe I think there might be just different fluctuations in supply and demand, like any two-sided marketplace, where you might have more of one and less of the other, or one has a different influx rate than the other. Chris Payak, question, follow-up. I meant the actual real-life data of all GMs as benchmarks, so compared to reality. Chris, well, again, so we feel there's factors that we're not taking in with this data that we want to first take in before we create benchmarks. Because what if, there are realistic things that happen to GMs that affect these scores that kind of make it unfair to people who are actually putting forth great effort, and so we want to figure that out, and then we'll kind of figure out like what the top and bottom 10% are. Copperhead Gaming, feel pretty good about 89% retention rate. Absolutely, you should. Ned's Dice, question, why is everything sent around 2-week periods? Isn't the most common thing that the longer take longer than that? I don't think I've ever had a game starting or transition with 2 weeks earlier. Ned's Dice, great question. And let me kind of dig into this. First session reliability right here. That's an active game. So if I join an active game, the chance that I should play in that active game the next 2 weeks should be high. Now, of course, we're probably going to do another pass. It's like maybe taking in date of next session. But almost every game, 8% of games on the platform are weekly, and then it's bi-weekly, and then there's a handful of monthly. Right? There's not as many monthly. So that's why we didn't kind of prioritize metrics around monthly. But if we start seeing it take big swings on people's dashboards, then we're probably going to have to create something special for monthly. So that's why those 2 weeks. Retention rate is they played with a game with you, and 2 weeks later they should still be playing in a game with you if it's a campaign. So that's kind of where the 2 weeks comes from. Okay. Longer term sort of make more sense. Question, can we get metrics data on the other type of game makers that tend to get off the ground quickly? 7.2, popular event tags, key terms. So Dragon Dice, which is really interesting. So we have actually done some analysis on this, and we looked at like what we considered at the time highly reliable GMs. The only thing that they all had in common is they all respond to messages really quickly. There was nothing else that was kind of common between them. Now, if you're looking to run the most popular game, you can see games sorted by popularity on the homepage. And if you look at the, let's see, I'll actually show you. Actually, I'll show that in a sec. Gamer music lovers. So GMs who only do a small number of games will be hurt at all by something like this. Right now, I'm only doing a campaign of 4 players. I have no plans. Well, Game Master Lover, that means you probably have a really good retention rate. See, the idea is, thinking like, if I have a really bad first session reliability or have no first session reliability, that's okay. That just means that you have like a solid group of players you keep running for. If you have a no onboarding success rate, like you see here, that's okay, because that means you're probably just running for your great players. But maybe you decided, hey, I want more players. Right. And I want to do starter set. We would say, well, you have a really high retention. Looks like these people really like playing with you. That's a great indicator that you are a good GM for maybe starter set or maybe another program. So game music lover or gamer music lover, that's kind of ideal because we could also then take into account the GM who's running lots of games and a GM who's only running 1 or 2. Okay. RPG Mama, does rescheduling games impact these? It does, but once, like I said, the whole idea is to, like, when you reschedule it, see how it impacts. Do you feel like it impacts it too much, too little? And that's what we hope to learn with our surveying and our user research in probably about a month or 2. Okay. RPG Mama question. I just answered that. Ajax, happy with my 100% first session reliability rate, but is the onboarding success rate of 0 a reflection of all the new game starter set people not converting to a $30 game? Okay, great question, Ajax. So Ajax is asking if they have a 0% onboarding success rate. It also depends on like how many people had gone through that, and so how long you've had that rate. And if that's for like a month, that shows that everyone who's played with you never played with you or another GM afterwards, right? But a 100% first session reliability rate means like we know that if we put a player with this person with Ajax, they are highly likely to actually have their game start. So like Ajax is incredibly reliable. How would it be possible to shrink? A player would have to delete their account. How about the ratio of incoming players, GMs? You said every week we're growing. We've never shrunk. Well, yeah, so shrinking is essentially when your churn is higher than your growth. That's how you would shrink. And we have like very, very small churn. The amount of stickiness is fantastic. Okay. RPG Mama question, does it affect retention if they leave the game and enter another game of yours? No, it actually doesn't because they just want to play in a different game with you. Phoenix says, question, I am interested in getting my new players connected into campaigns with other GMs, which would build on onboarding. How can I find GMs with similar style to refer players to? Phoenix, there's not a tool for that yet, but if we see like a really powerful indicators with this data, we might make something that's like a refer a GM feature, which would be cool. But right now, I think, the Discord is probably the best way to find other GMs that you kind of vibe with that you'd want to recommend your players to. Tom Murr, I only have one campaign currently. Rescheduling a session will tank my scores. Yeah, rescheduling, well, it's exactly the type of feedback, right? Like, how much does it tank your score? If you have 3 weeks of good data and 1 week of bad data and it just goes to 75, that's still a really good score. But again, that's the kind of stuff that we're going to be excited to get back when we send out our surveys or if we end up picking you for user research. Okay. I rescheduled due to players' decisions, not mine, and I would hate for that to reflect poorly. Exactly, RPG Mama. That's why these stats have no effect on anything right now, because that kind of stuff that you're talking about is stuff that we want to account for, especially when you start seeing how it affects your score. Because maybe you reschedule and it's rescheduled just a week, and your score isn't affected by your reschedule. But maybe if it has to be rescheduled for 3 weeks, then it does. And how much does that affect your overall your score? Dave Smash question, you were talking about starter sets. Did I hear something about people being chosen or being related to these metrics? I'm trying to get off the ground and things are slow going. So Dave Smash, we have a wonderful feature called starter set that has been pretty impactful in getting what we call D&D Dannies, right? People who've never played tabletop games before into their first game. It's worked really well, but the thing is to decide who gets access to that, we had to do manual. We just couldn't give it to everyone because there are people that would give a bad first experience. So it was an application process. And then the customer team reviewed all the applications and approved a number of people. But it would be cool if that could be programmatic, if we didn't have to review everything, if we could give people access because we had enough data to know, like, yes, this person is a really strong GM and they're vetted with the experience. Shinnis, you can shrink an inactive account, but you can if you're gauging off of actual play and actual revenue rather than just like having an account present. Okay, Xanath, can you explain tilt rate one more time? Yes. So if your game needs 3 people to start and it's a 5-person total, tilt rate is how quickly you get to 3 players. Essentially enough players to start the game, enough players so the game tilts and then begins to start. Ned's Dice question, if you fill up a game within the first week of being posted, but the schedule is set for 4 weeks later, does that reflect bad on the metrics? So it will reflect really good on your first session reliability, but probably not on your game launch confidence. But if it launches later, then that week it's going to take in, hey, this game launched. That's a confidence indicator. So it would probably show your first session reliability really high, and it would probably show your game launch confidence probably like 15% lower, depending on how many weeks. But because when you hit active, and you have a session and then you have another session coming up because you had enough players, that is a reliable metric, right? Like, oh, you said you're going to start this game and then the game started, and then players played. Those are all like really strong reliability signals. Let's see. Ross M question: most of my stats are full of blanks, so only onboarding is present, but quite high. What would cause blank spaces? Weeks where I didn't make new games? Yeah, Ross. So blank spaces aren't bad. That just means we don't have enough data. But kind of how I might envision in the future is we're looking for any data, right? And if it's like, hey, I need a GM for this, well, you have a really high onboarding rate. Great. That's enough for me to know that, like, if I put a player with you, they're going to have a great time. Either they're going to play with you and maybe continue playing with you, or they're going to find another GM because you give them great first experience. Same if someone has a really high first session reliability or really high retention rate. Okay. Tafandra question: since my data is in the range that you're calling good score, how do I use this information to help launch new games? Tafandra, we're not actually using this data for anything yet. All this data is in alpha, and we want to see how GM's actions affect this data over like probably a month or two, and then kind of talk with GMs afterwards, saying like, hey, do you think this is a realistic score? What things happened that affected your score negatively or positively, do you think? And then take that to go back and kind of tweak how we collect this data before we do anything else with it. Philomena's question under Smash. Question: what about one-shots? Great one-shot would be a great starter set possibility. Yeah, Philomena, I was just talking about this. I was saying that onboarding success rate is probably a great indicator of a one-shot GM. So is first session reliability. Now, you might not have a good retention rate, and that's okay, because if you have a first session reliability, I joined your one-shot, I played in the one-shot. Hell yeah, that's awesome. And that's what these metrics would capture. And that would also show, cool, I want to have a GM who is likely to run that first session, right? Because I know that they're not going to cancel on a starter set game. Let's see. I thought about changing the tilt rate to only start counting once at least one player expresses interest. I worry about de-incentivizing fringe listings. Joshua A., that's great. But they don't do anything. They don't influence anything yet. And so I wonder if, but that kind of feedback is cool. Like, if you're thinking maybe just one, then that's something that we might want to take when we do the survey, and kind of tweak that. So I think that's kind of perfect. Like, once interest is showed, or maybe we look at all of your historical games, or we look at all historical games of that, and we create a benchmark for that system, saying like, hey, we're running Blades in the Dark. It takes usually 32 days for Blades in the Dark game to launch. So you can see how you rate up against the benchmark. Okay. Ian Wright says, I don't understand game launch confidence, or how do I have 100% tilt rate but 0% launch confidence? So your tilt rate, actually, you know what? I'd have to look at your account to tell you more why. But I believe game launch confidence is, gosh, I'd have to look. I don't know why you'd have that either. Vo says, how does one-shot versus multi-session one-shot, very short campaign versus campaign affect retention? So retention is just, does this person play with you 1 week, and then 2 weeks later they're still playing with you? That's what retention is right now. If you have a game like that, that means that you have a really high first session reliability and a really high retention rate. Okay. But I think also, like, we want to put in something that's like campaign ended, so that when we, if we realize that, like, oh, my retention rate bombed. Why? I ended my campaign. Oh, okay, great. But we also know that GMs are starting new campaigns. So does your new campaign start within time so that it actually doesn't affect your retention rate? Or do we need to account for campaigns ending? And that's what we're excited to see. How does one-shot versus multi-session one-shot? Ned's Dice question. Some GMs like me do not charge for session 0 and have a free session 0 in order to do that. How do these affect metrics? Do they count as free sessions? Ned's Dice, that's great. We're actually thinking about building a free session 0 button to account for this. So if you say like, hey, my retention is really shit because I offer free sessions, well, then we need to account for that. We can't just say, nope, tough, deal with it, Ned. We have to build that into the metric. And if we build that in the metric, we have to do something that allows us to record if this is a free session because of, free session 0. And we've also know, like, a number of GMs will forget to change their prices back, right? They set their games to 0. So we might do something where, like, when you change a price to free, it's free just for the next session, and then it pops back up to the regular price. Not gonna lie, pretty disappointed that the answers and updates promised that you were going to explain how actionable in office hours. Well, Tafandra, what I'm going about here is how they're going to be actionable for us. And we're not using these to influence how things are booked yet, but I wanted GMs to know about this before we make any decisions that's going to like change the GM expectations dramatically, right? I'd rather have this in alpha so GMs can kind of see how they're inputted and see how they're affected so that GMs have full control and confidence in them. Sophie Lemons, question. For the recent status applications, do you know when we should hear back? We've actually, if you were in the last one, we've already kind of approved GMs. There might be another wave maybe next month. Samuel Luglis, a question. Does free games, unpaid players affect these numbers? Just paid games. Just paid games. We don't, no free games won't affect any of this stuff. Let's see. Question. Aaron, I might have missed what Starter Kit is. Ignore if that was already answered. Starter Kit is just a process to allow new players to get in games really quickly. It's kind of like a quiz flow, and it's for people that are overwhelmed by search. All right. Let's see. Chris Payak. If I offer high number of starter set games, but only a few gain 2 players, how does that affect my stats? Well, Chris, do those players that you end up playing with go and play with other GMs on the platform? That's what onboarding success rate would be. But if a bunch of people play with you and then they never come back to the platform, then that would show that you have a lower rate. We haven't seen that historically with good GMs. We have seen GMs who we've had to like ban from the platform because they were giving really terrible experiences for players. Usually people who turn people away are also people that have, a more than 1 negative star review or more than 1 star review. But again, it's one of those things, like I can see how like a lot of people here would be concerned, but the idea is everyone who's here is probably the people who are going to benefit the most from this because it's going to be highlighting you as a reliable GM that is taking this, you are professional about this. You're showing up to your games. There are other people who just kind of forget they're running games, or they ghost their players and they just take that money and close their account. There's, a lot of these things that we want to, I'd rather have a player play with one of you rather than a GM who's going to turn that player away from the platform, or a GM who's going to give a bad experience to that player. Okay. We have, Darku, yes, yeah, if you're a one-shot, you might have a bad retention, but you're going to have a really good onboarding and a really good first session reliability if you're a heavy one-shot GM, which is also killer metrics. The idea is, I don't think we're expecting GMs to excel in every one of these, but each one of these is a different signal that there's a quality GM that's running this game. Okay. Let's see. Dark does that make sense that like it's not every metric, it's each metric itself is some sort of indicator that can help us figure out if you're a high quality GM. Dreams question, how about when we reschedule a session and add a new session in its place? So that seems pretty reliable. That seems like, hey, we're rescheduling the session and we need a new one. And if it's happening within those 2 weeks, then that's pretty easy, right? Or maybe you're skipping 1 week, then that doesn't really affect retention. All right. Question, what is the end goal of this data to be gathered? Lee, so I was kind of talking about that earlier, but one is being able to programmatically know the GMs that, well, there's actually 3 things, right? We have some GMs who are the bottom 10%. And then we have some GMs who are in the bottom like 30%. Those GMs often just don't know that they're doing something wrong, or they need a little extra help, right? So being able to like give them messages like saying, hey, looks like you're having trouble with this. Why don't you join this GM webinar? Or why don't you check out this video? Or why do you do this? Something to help them improve their experience. And if we see those people are very intrigued to like, oh, I want to get better, that's great, right? Some people are going to just ignore those and they're going to try to treat this platform like a Roll20 forum where they're not interested in, delivering an experience that's worth paying for. And then there's also all these GMs that are above this 50% rate that are providing a great experience that we want to make sure that players know, hey, this GM's reliable. This GM is going to give you a great game. And so, reviews being part of that, but also knowing that like this GM will show up to their game, they won't ghost you, is great. So there's things we've thought about, like maybe doing like a verified or a vetted, something like that. But also maybe saying like, hey, we're going to go ahead and give you access to starter set, because right now having to do starter set manually is really hard, but being able to automatically vet that stuff through something that was programmatic would be great. But again, we have to make sure that it's fair and it accounts for a lot of things. There's so much stuff that it will need to account for. And that's why it's being launched before we even have any actions or intention behind it. So GMs can go ahead and tell us like how it's being affected when on the regular after seeing it used. Okay. Keith Langley, if you make a free session button that auto resets to the regular price, can we please get a player price change button that resets to one after the session original price? I don't know what that means. Can we please get a player price change button that also resets after one session to the original price? Oh, okay, maybe. If we see that be if our research shows that like most GMs are like, it's frustrating, I only give discounts and it's only for the week, then yeah, maybe. Let's see. Let's see, where's our next question? That was Keith. That was Dreams. Simple Fox question: if a paid player is given 100% discount, are they considered free? Yes, they're considered free, but they're a paid player, right? So it would still kind of count against retention, and that's why, like, if that messes your retention score up a lot, then we have to account for it some way, and that's why I was talking about that free session 0 button or that free next session button. But what if you schedule several, but only a small number of players joined? Vogue, can you rephrase that? I'm not sure the specifics of what you're asking. Chris Payak, onboarding success rate 100% so far, which is great. That probably also means you're running a lot of one shots, I would assume. Let's see. Would this make it much harder than it already is to get new GMs started? I've heard that since the beginning of the website, when people saying like, I have less reviews than the other GMs. But what we notice is there's certain players out there that just take chances on new GMs. They play with them and they talk about this. Like, oh, I always like to try with the new GMs. It's usually a little bit cheaper, but I also get to see like, if I found a great new awesome GM to play with. So yeah, I don't think so. I've heard that same case time and time again. And if I look at retention and I look at reliability scores, I actually did this the other day. I looked at the last week and I sorted it by new GMs to old GMs, and there's no pattern. New GMs have the same frequency of reliability as like older GMs, with like a slight skewer of older GMs being a little bit higher on reliability signals. But yeah, I don't think this would actually affect new GMs. Question: can we expect similar stats for players anytime soon? So actually, Neds, there is something we're kind of looking at as with new players, which this is we're mostly focused on here, right? New players, we don't have any data on it, right? But there are some previous players that we are thinking about to see their impact on site, especially players who join games and then drop out of them, or they join 2 games to see which one starts first. So that is something that we're looking on, and we're more looking at that holistically rather than just that player's reliability. We're also looking at like a number of things, like how many games they join, to see what are good ways to curb this. One of the ways we know is if we start doing charge at checkout, which when you sign up for a game, you're charged for that first session. But I'll get into that later. Let's see. Good question. Joshua A. is one of the long-term intentions behind data to quality control and remove GMs, bring down the platform down the road. So Joshua A., what's great is the most of the GMs that are in that like bottom 10% end up being reported or end up like getting flagged pretty quickly. But there are some that just continue to give bad first experiences. That's how we find people who might be disintermediating, taking players off site. So those tools are currently being used as we investigate people that we remove from the platform. So that is currently happening. But the people that we're removing are not people who are trying to actually like make a go at this. They are choosing to actively go against terms of service, code of conduct, or harm first player experiences. Okay. We need to make sure to show us how our listings are doing. Aaron Stein, I could give you that, but it'd actually take a lot to actually build that for you. But it would make no difference. If you have 4 views in three clicks, that means you have a 75% conversion rate, but that's a law of small, those numbers are so small that there is no trends you can really garner from that. Okay. Let's see. Including session 0. I scheduled 10 starter sets over the next 2 weeks, but only got 2 players assigned. Starter set is based on site placing new players. How will those unfilled schedule pending adventures impact metrics? Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, I mean, the idea is, maybe we will just ignore starter set, or maybe starter set's part of it. But starter set is also going through a bunch of A/B testing right now, so I would say starter set should be a lot more. A lot more efficient in the future as we go through our A/B testing. Right now, and I'm going to tell you guys about the A/B test that's coming up for starter set next. Okay. Next, no trends you can garner through click-through rate, knowing people are clicking on one thumbnail versus another. Well, next, the thing is, if you have one thumbnail that gets 2 clicks and one that gets 3, that's still not a huge impact, right? Because most of the traffic that GMs are getting to their games is really small numbers. So it's really hard to actually figure out a trend. If you actually look at how trends are calculated, it's really hard to gauge the impact there. Because people are shopping, right? How that goes. There's a high likelihood if someone's looking at your game, they're highly considering it. So that's why we see, like, once people click in, there's a high likelihood they're going to book. But even like clicking in, those are small numbers. Okay. Starter set just 5e. How do you get into it? Right now is just an application that goes out probably once a month. But eventually we want to have some way to programmatically give GMs access to it. Yeah, we could split test, Aaron, and that would involve us having to build a pretty powerful tool that we just do not have the company size to do. All right. Shouldn't, if you are seeing people doing that, you should definitely report them. It's so hard when we don't know what works and what doesn't. Yeah, of course. The best thing is if I gave you that, it still wouldn't tell you what works and what doesn't. That's the problem. There's the law of large numbers, right? You need a lot of data to actually be able to inform something. And in a few clicks, it doesn't give enough. But I do think as we grow in size, we will start seeing like that traffic increase. And then I do think we'll have enough of a team size to maintain a tool that shows you impressions and shows you clicks. But I do think that like we need to get to like the, probably 5x the size, where you're actually seeing that traffic that you can infer on that data and you can actually take action. We also then have a team that can maintain a tool like that. Is it so hard that we don't know what works and what doesn't? Oh, yeah, I just read that. Hobon says, volume is really important part of what you're asking for. A site-wide trend report would be far more helpful than individual testing. Ding ding. Yeah, you could have a site-wide report of like what is the average click-through rate. But I can give you this. What's the average click-through rate of a game, of all games? Probably like 2%. Thank you for clarifying. I appreciate you taking the time to address. Of course, Nix. Okay. Should we talk about the A/B test that's coming to starter set next? Or does anyone have any more questions on the Insights dashboard? Okay. So we are going to be running a CTA test to starter set. And so the CTA test is essentially call to action, right? It's essentially a button or something that calls people to starter sets. And so any player feedback on trends on what they're looking for in a DM, voice acting, GameNate, every player's different, right? So like focus on what you are great at and make sure that's really clear in your game description, in your player profile, and the right players will join with you. But I don't try to put yourself in a box of what you think most players want. Try to be your best version of yourself because that's what players are going to want to play with. Okay. Ajax, of course, I'm happy to. That's why I do these things. Okay. What is the starter set and how can I get involved? Questions. Some of us throw a lot of spaghetti at the wall hoping somebody stick. We want to make these listings go up. Is it considered bad? Nope. But it's good for you to know like what your average tilt rate is. I think tilt rate and time to tilt is kind of more important for GMs right now than it is for us because we know that like some games just take longer, some systems take longer. But it would be really interesting once we start calculating that to show you like, hey, here's the difference between Monster of the Week and Blades in the Dark, and these are the different times to tilt that's kind of average on each game. Some of us throw, but I would have, okay, what is starter set? How can it evolve? Someone is asking, Hobot is asking about game pages. Yeah, right now, if I actually go here, and I showed this last week, but if I go to the homepage, you'll see that there's popular game systems. And if you click on browse by all game systems, this is actually sorted by popularity, and we're adding more every week. So if you're curious on like what is popular, that's the best example. Same with the modules for D&D, and it'll be same with the modules for Pathfinder. Okay, let's see. Gamer, music lover, what is the meaning of life? To enjoy it. To make people who you interact with know that they're loved. At least I think. Okay. Vanishing Tower was starter set. We've talked about that. I'll go into it a little bit later when I talk about the CTA. Would there be a way to see what days and times are most popular? Patrick, this already exists. If you want to run a game at the most popular time ever, it's evenings and weekends in the U.S. time zones, Eastern to Pacific. That's the most popular. The most popular day is Saturday and Sunday. Least popular day is Monday, and it ramps up from there. Okay. Okay, yeah, Hobart into games including popularity. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we're doing the CTA test. And so with this CTA test is trying to like, hey, we launched where the nav showed Learn to Play, which took you to starter set, but no one clicked it. But we knew starter set did really well in ads, and a lot of people were navigating to it, and a lot of people were even searching for it. So that CTA didn't garner the right attention of Danny's. So there's going to be a CTA test. The CTA test will be affecting these people, people who are not game masters, people who have not booked in a game before, people who do not have an account, or people who are signed out. These are the targeting conditions that we're going to apply to this test. This test is going to show a number of different ways people can enter the starter set. And this is also going to help us figure out how much of our traffic is Danny's. We have Danny's, which is the D&D curious player. And then we have Taylor's, or Tabletop Taylor's. She is the person who's played a bunch of games already. They know what they're looking for. They know what they want, and they use our site to help them find those. And so Taylor's have experience, Danny's have none. It's going to help. It's going to be really helpful to see which CTA is interacted with more, knowing when we have a new customer. If we have 100 new people and 60 of them identify as Danny's, then we have to do a lot to really help new players. But if only 30, then we know, okay, then 70% of our users are people that are not brand new and they're experienced players. Okay, what is it? Are any of these insights tracked metrics intended to be shown to players? No. I mean, we might. I don't think showing like a retention rate is good for the consumer in the sense of like it's just mumbo jumbo to them. Maybe instead we want to show like vetted GM or something like that. But first we want to have good insight that the insight on these metrics is fair and that they make sense and they're realistic. But back to the CTA test. So we're going to do a double hero. So we're going to have a version of the homepage that has two hero images, one for Taylor's and one for Danny's. We're going to do a version of the site that has two CTAs on the hero. One is to learn to play games and one's that's find games. We're going to have an interstitial page that asks your experience before you go to search. And if you are brand new to games, it'll take you to the starter set flow. And if you're not, it'll take you just to regular game search. And then there's going to be an interstitial in search that actually, I wonder if I can show you what that looks like. Let's see. Is this it? Nope. Dang, I don't have it handy. I had a mock-up. But interstitial essentially is going to show like a little card in search before anyone's interacted with it. So when you just land on search, that shows, learn to play D&D with a pro GM. And so those are the tests that are going to be coming out for starter set. Okay, we got a question. Isn't 2 weeks a bit too short of time period to measure retention? To me, that seems a bit short and could cause spikes and valleys. Hobart, great question. We didn't see a big spikes and valleys when we look at on our side with Metabase when we're looking at GMs. But maybe you'll see that. And maybe when we dive into more individual metrics on each GM, that makes a big difference. So we'll see. But if it does, then maybe we'll do 3 weeks. Question: how are conversions going with other publishers to start offering starter sets? I'm Dan. I'm having meetings. I hope they go well. I've pitched it, and so I'm hoping we have some and we've built starter set in a way that we can have like other versions of starter set for other games. So yeah. Okay. Let's see. What else did I have in my? Okay, that's insights. That's the new CTA. I can talk about giveaways, and I can talk new swag, or I can talk about fraud protection. Okay, so we launched something that if you can only get paid out 15% of your credit balance. That's just by default. If you need more, you just message support. But that's because we had a pretty sizable amount of fraud that was happening. We had to plug that hole. And so this stopped it dramatically. But if you're a GM and you have more than 15% of credit in your payout, just go ahead and message support, and they can manually kind of push that through so you don't have to have that lingering funds in there. Okay, let's see. All right, should we do giveaways or should we do swag? What do you guys want to talk about next? Let's see. Do I have anything else? That's kind of about it. Okay. Midnight Brewer. How do we see there's underserved time slot? Midnight Brewer. Run games when you can run your best game ever. There's always an underserved time slot. There's people coming from all over the world. There isn't a tool right now that says this player wanted to play a game at this time, because the way filtering works is also so full of GMs, but people are looking at a bunch of different times, and they're not choosing really specific times that are easy to call out. The most underserved times are during the day, but there's also a lot of GMs who are serving games that time. So I wouldn't say there's really an underserved time. I would say there's peak times. Swag, giveaways. Does this mean that we can change our incoming funds to credit? Not yet, Patrick, but it is something we're looking at. Just say swag for the end. Okay. Paul is asking about starter sets. Starter sets is something you can only apply to. Like I said, I would like it to be programmatic, where we can tell like this GM was super trustworthy. We'll let them get access to starter set games. But we don't have that yet, and that's why we're doing these insights. But right now you have to apply for starter set, and applications usually kind of open once a month. Okay. Giveaways. Because I was just talking about this. Remember these play pages? These play pages that we're launching, we are going to do a little giveaway to GMs who review games and modules. So if you review Starfinder, you click on Starfinder, and you go down here and you leave a review, or you review one of the many D&D modules. Go back to the homepage. That's what they are. One of the D&D modules, like Waterdeep Dragon Heist, Dungeons of the Mad Mage, Wild Beyond the Witchlight, any of these. If you review any of these, you are now going to be entered into a raffle. Now, if you've reviewed them previously, you're still in the raffle. Essentially, anyone who's written a review of a game system or a module will be added into this giveaway. Every time you do a review, that is another entry. So you can review all the modules if you want, and that each one will be an entry. And we're going to be giving away a bunch of stuff. So we're going to do one giveaway for modules, and we're going to do one giveaway for game systems, because that way it's a little more fair, because if you only run D&D, you can review all the modules. But the problem with that is if you run Pathfinder, or if you run Blaze in the Dark only, you only get to really review Blaze in the Dark. So we're going to do one giveaway that is just for game systems, and one that is just for modules. This is only for GMs, and let's see, so only GM accounts. Let's see, what else was it? And it's anyone who's already made a review all the way up to February, the end of February. In March, we might have another giveaway. But it's to fill out these pages, we want to make them fresh. We want to make them really valuable to players. And so we want to make sure GM reviews are on here, because that's really important to how GMs talk about a game, because they are the ones who run the game. So for the month of February, we'll be giving away either an Elgato Wave, the mic, the Elgato mic, or the Elgato Cam. You get to pick either one. And we're doing one giveaway that is for modules and one giveaway that is for game systems. RPG Mama, where are the modules? I know this page, but not the module. They are on the homepage. Just go to the startplaying.games. Yeah, so reviews that you've already put are already entered into it. Ned's Dice. Well, I mean, if you homebrew in D&D or Pathfinder or any other game, you just go and review the game then. Any geographical restrictions? Nope. We pay for shipping. We'll send it out to you. Do you want reviews if we played it, even though we've run it? So this is only open to GMs. But if you haven't played in it, but you haven't run it, but you've played in it as a GM, that's okay. Is there a D&D system review too, or just modules? Patrick, game systems and modules. So there's both. I'm going to show this again because I feel like maybe people are confused. So if you go to the homepage, you can see browse popular tabletop RPG systems. So you can review any of these, and we're adding more each day. There's also browse popular Dungeons and Dragons systems. There'll eventually be a Pathfinder adventure paths as well, but you can review any of these, and that will put you into the giveaway. All right, let's see if we have any questions about that. Chris Pack, can you add the referral code to the GM's profile? That would make it more attractive for me to promote SP on my social media and my paid media. That's actually something we've been thinking about as a way to make referrals. Like when you refer your game, like show your referral code on your game link. That is something we're looking at. We're going to be doing a big referrals overhaul in Q3. Okay. I sure that the top part of the average I didn't realize was my attention was 91.9. Okay, quick. There's more chance to win if we post more reviews. Yeah, I mean, so if you post, I mean, you get an entry for every review you make into game systems or modules. So if you review 5 modules, that's 5 entries. If you review 5 game systems, that's 5 entries. But there's a separate review for modules and a separate review for game systems. And these will all show up kind of in the email too of all the different play pages we've launched. Do people know the term tabletop RPG, specifically the people who would be checking out game systems? I think game systems would be more accessible than tabletop RPG or spell out tabletop RPG. Ajax, great question. So with tailors, tabletop RPG is a term that they know. That's from the persona research we've done. Danny's don't know what a TTRPG is. But Danny's also aren't browsing by game. They're confused, and we want to get them in starter sets as soon as possible. Okay. Now it's time to talk about swag. All right, I'm very excited to show this to you. This is our newest design. Dun 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 da 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 da. Let me show you the back. Dun 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 dun. It's like a tour shirt, and there's a bunch of fake places on it. You can see you got Waterdeep, Rivendell, Sharn, the Adari LV426. This is the Multiverse Worlds Tour. You got Greyhawk, Gallifrey, King's Landing. So yeah, this is very dope. I'm very stoked on this. We also have it as a hoodie. We'll just start playing on the front with the back design as well. Hello. Valentine came to say hello, you all. Oh. All right. I'm going to go ahead and drop the link for y'all. If you want to get these, Boom, there. It's on pre-sale for the next 2 weeks, and then pre-sales close, and then they'll be shipping end of March. Yes. Oh, it's okay. I'll take you out. Yeah. All right. I need to go take Valentine now. I hope you all have Valentine swag options. Oh my gosh. Should we make dog clothes? Maybe we should. Maybe we should. You're giving me ideas now. Also, I mean, we have this hat too. This is a nice little. Nope. I gotta move it back. That's right. Here. Yeah, there you go. Okay. I'll look into if we can make clothes for dogs. Oop. Cool. Team, I hope I answered all your questions today. I know there was a lot, but I hope we got to everything. Let me. Am I late for a meeting? Okay, yeah, I got to jump into. I am late for a meeting. Hunter, apologize. But if you have any other questions, feel free and let me know. But I hope we got to everything today, and I'm really excited. I will talk to you all soon. Have a great week. Bye, y'all.
Thousand years you've been reading terror, stroking up fears from deep in your lair. We're here to tell you that your time has come. This is our kingdom today.
Who are the fools who would dare threaten me?
Dragon can fall. We'll slay you with our mighty sword. Dragon can fall. Your heart will soon be ours. Dragon can fall. You are the beast we're training for. We are the party who dare threaten you. We have no fear of your ancient power. Your weapon fire will not make us cower. We're here to tell you that the spells are cast. You will not last the night.
You are the fools who will now feel my wrath.
Dragon can fall. We'll slay you with our mighty sword. Dragon can fall. Your heart will soon be ours. Dragon can fall. You are the beast we're training for. We are the party who now will fight back. Quick, grab the magic